One of the things I like to do first is go in and I like to cut this knuckle here. There's that part in there, you can kind of see. Just kind of cut along right here into that fascia, get that tissue off right there. You're just pretty much following the muscle groups here. This one I'm going to cut off for a shank, for a slow cook. Got to get all this tissue separated right here. This fascia, this connective tissue that keeps the muscle groups together. You can just use your hands to pull it apart too. This little top layer, it looks like there's a cap here. It looks like there's blends together, but when you look closely, you'll see that there's another muscle group here connected. It's basically like the calf of the leg, the hindquarter here. Then I slip this knife. That's why I always use like a long, thinner butcher blade, so you can kind of get into those areas. Kind of slip it in there. Kind of see it right there. Break open this all this connective tissue around the joint here to kind of get it loosened up. Cut that ligament in there. Cut these tendons on the side. And then just cut on along the inside of the femur to release the rest of that. Right there. So this is a nice, what I like to do for a slow cook, shank, soups and stews and stuff like that. Put that right there. Then I'm gonna start breaking down the rest of this main quarter. I'm gonna start separating these cuts here, the main cuts. You can see a lot of it. You can just pull apart, and then the rest of that connective tissue that's there, you just slice it. There's one right there. The sirloin is right here. You cut some of this tissue. You just cut along the bone here, the femur. That's why I use this knife. It's nice and flexible, so you can kind of get in there and cut alongside the bone. I kind of do that to kind of move that out of the way a little bit. And then for the mule deer buck here, there's this, the gland that's in here that's connected to his tarsal gland that gives out that scent that's in here too, and you just take that out. You can't really miss it, you know, you don't even really have to look for it. You're going to be taking out all the connective tissue anyways. It's kind of just connected to that. You'll see here in a moment. It might be right here. It's right here, actually, on this side. But this butchering process is one of my favorite parts, and I always say that too. Like, you know, a lot of people talk about that. You know, the hunt is just one part of it. In regards to self-sustainability, food sovereignty, acquiring your own protein, local, free-range, nutrient-dense, culturally significant. You know, our people have been hunting and eating the mule deer since forever. In this whole process of that, I mean, to me, this is a really important process, the butchering process, and I find, like I always say, I find a lot of empowerment in doing this process myself, in being completely self-sustainable in that regard, and having a hand in every step of the way is to me is really important. It's important to do that all the way from getting out and tracking down, locating the animal, to making the kill, to packing it out, to curing it, to butchering it, to processing it, to the different cuts, all the way to the table. To me, I find a great empowerment and fulfillment in that. Just cleaning up this bone here. I keep bones here, using them for bone broth, cutting bits of this meat off. All these small bits I'm cutting off right there is gonna go for trim. It's gonna go to grind, and so I can make burgers, so I can make whatever sausage, chorizo or something like that, or, you know, make burger patties. So just try to get a little bit of this meat off right here. Sometimes I keep that tissue, all this tissue, I keep that stuff on there because it really breaks down into this gelatinous substance, really super hearty, really nutritious. Come over here to this cut right here. Gonna separate these two right here. But again, I mean, I just love this. To me, I just feel it's very fulfilling to, you know, have a hand in every step of the way. I really enjoy that. It's very empowering. So what I usually do is I'll just try to break down these, you know, these main cuts right here, these different, basically the different muscle groups right here. I'll just try to break them down first and get them separated. And then I start cleaning them up later and start breaking them into cuts and getting them into different cuts, for whether that be for stir fry stuff, you know, slow cooks, or steaks. Like I really love steaks. I love to, whether that's just cooking it as a steak itself or making it into a stir fry. I like to have a lot of those. So I like to have a little bit of options. Taking off a little bit of this extra trim. This is just all fascia, connective tissue. This is the only parts that I kind of throw out. It's just this stuff here that's connective tissue that's makes the meat tough if you leave it on there. So I try to get some of it off right now. Start working on this one right here now that I got the main groups here separated. Let's go ahead and get this tissue off. And I kind of just learned this on my own. My dad always did this, but, you know, growing up, I wasn't ever really paying attention to how he was doing it. But I just got kind of exposed to it there. And then as I started getting more into this myself, I started looking up videos and seeing what other people were doing, and kind of seeing, oh, it's not that hard. You're just following the muscle groups right here, and you got a couple of your steaks right here, your sirloin, your top sirloin, you know, your cap and things like that. Just kind of watch some more conventional butchering videos and to get an idea. But this silver skin too, I like to cut this off while the overall cut is still intact, because it makes it a little bit easier to do once you start breaking them down into these little steaks, and then you try to get that silver skin off. It's a little bit more challenging because it's a smaller piece you're trying to deal with right here. So I just start getting it off right now. All of this stuff right here. and this can be time consuming for sure, you know, but a lot of people, I think, you know, will send their meat away to get processed, you know, but I hear concerns of people don't say they don't truly know if they're getting, is that their steak, is that their meat they're getting, or did it get mixed up with someone else's? And, you know, those are just risks I'm not willing to take. And, you know, I like to know exactly what's going on with my food, and I like to keep it in my possession the whole time there. So that's why, you know, I prefer to do this myself here. And it's all about empowerment. And that's part of our cultural values is all of them is savagimas, to be industrious and to be independent. Hivig, to be not reliant and dependent upon anyone else for certain basic things. Sure, there's a level of interdependence that happens in our communities, but overall, you know, that interdependence is really based upon people that you know, are independent to a degree. This right here produces some of my favorite steaks. And also too, you know, it's much more economical. It's much more affordable, obviously, to be doing this on your own. I think it can get pretty expensive, in the hundreds and even thousands of dollars, depending on the size of the animal and how much meat you got, to send it to a processor. And to me, it's all about hunting for me too. Is all about acquiring your meat and saving money, so you don't have to spend your money. Your money can go towards other things. So that's what it's all about for me. So I just, it's not sport. It's not some sort of recreational activity. This is a method of acquiring nutrient-dense, ethically sourced protein and saving money, trying to get one step closer to subsistence and one step closer to food sovereignty. That's what it's all about for me. And so, you know, I don't think I would send it to a processor. Even if I was rich and had all the money in the world, I don't know that I would send it to a processor, because I just enjoy this process. To me, this is what living is. Like, what else? There's a lot of things, of course, obviously there's more to life than just this, but what else should my time go to? If we go back into, you know, very recent history, especially for us O'odham people in Salt River in central Arizona, people were still largely subsisting off the land up until like 60s, 70s, from what I hear, you know, talking to the older people were still growing food. They were still, you know, eating protein from around the area, which was from, you know, the chuv, the jackrabbit, or the thaw, cottontail, the tasikur, the javelina. People were still kind of getting their meat like that. You know, they were growing food. They were still going out foraging things up until very recently, you know, up until, you know, the 70s, and, you know, so people were always busy doing something, having to do a process of food. And to me, that was what people did for survival. And, you know, I think that that's one of the factors in why we are experiencing the collective degradation of our health that we are, is not just Native people, but all human beings. Is one of those factors. There's many factors playing a role in that, but one of those is our disconnection from our food sources, and having a hand in these processes and experiencing that fulfillment and understanding, you know, having a little bit more, we have a little bit more gratitude for your food once you understand the work that goes into producing just a little bit of meat or just a little bit of, you know, foraged, you know, plant food. Like, a lot of work goes into it, and you look at it and you're like, damn, I spent several hours and days, you know, working on this, and this is all I got. So you start to really appreciate food a little bit more. Like when I cut these steaks up and I see what I got in the end, I look at it, I'm like, man, this is much different than going to the store and getting a 12-ounce ribeye. You know, you don't really need to think about the work. You're not thinking about where that came from. You're not thinking about the animal, the hands that prepared it. And you're just, you know, if you got the money and you can afford to buy these nice ribeyes every week, and you're eating it, and you look at it and you're like, man, but, you know, I didn't have anything to do with processing this. I didn't have anything to do with acquiring this food. I just got the money and I went and bought it from the grocery store. And how sustainable is this? Like, if you wiped away, you know, your financial resources, you wiped away access to a butcher, and you didn't have any of that, and you were forced to go out there and hunt for your food, you would be so surprised, you know, and hunters know this, but you'd be so surprised, like, man, I got this big animal, then of course you got a lot of meat, but my steaks are small. And it gives you a sense of how people were eating back in the day, you know. and you know, in particular in this area, and many other indigenous peoples, our people were drying meat, were smoking meat to preserve it. But we didn't have these nice steaks. You know, they would get a freshly killed, and they would cut it up, and they would gain, they would roast that. You know, gai chuku, roasted meat. That was something that was really favored. The people loved it. So I'm gonna start cutting into this. Like I said, this is my favorite portion to be cutting the steaks out. I forget what they call this. I forget what the butchers call this cut. But you're gonna get some of this fascia off. But you know, this is what you understand. You have a little bit more appreciation for your food if you're growing it yourself, you're foraging it, you're farming, you know, you're hunting it, you're fishing it, and you know, you look at how much it yields for the work that was required to do that, and you think, man, this is not that much food. Now I need to eat a little bit more mindfully. I need to be more, I need to ration a little bit more, you know? So this is why the food process, having a hand in it, it's critical. It's important for that understanding. Not everyone's into that. If you don't care about that, that's fine. But for me, the whole purpose of living is to try to be close to the land, close to the natural world. I have a spiritual connection to it, close to the people I love, and do things that I enjoy and that I love, and to celebrate life, to celebrate the world, celebrate the four-legged, you know, the winged, the fin, celebrate the seasons, celebrate the beauty of the land. That's, for me, that's what, you know, living is. There's no need to search for enlightenment, because the ancestors already laid it out. You know, enlightenment is just not a word I use, but I see people using that a lot. To me, it's just, it's already been laid out, and that's what living is appreciating all these things right here and enjoying it and doing the best that you can, you know, until you get onto the next phase of whatever it is. So I know I'm babbling. Usually I get to this a little bit quicker, but I start babbling here because, you know, I'm talking about all this stuff, you know, I get real excited and things I'm really passionate about right here. And so I like processing food. It's not just meat eating. I like processing food that I've foraged. It's spring is about to be upon us. We're going to be out foraging the cactus buds, hanam. We're going to be out doing that pretty soon. And so I enjoy that. When we start planting and squash and things like that, and corn, you know, I enjoy that process too. To me, it's food. There's no difference. So I'm gonna cut this piece in half so I can get a couple of steaks. This is a younger buck, so it's not as big as like a mature buck, but it's still something. So there we go. There's a couple of steaks right there, and I'm gonna go ahead and round these off a little bit right here, so I kind of make them a little bit even. And the rest of this stuff I'm cutting off, that's going for trim. That's going for burger. I'm just gonna go ahead and round this off right there. So that way the steak looks good, but also if you get it as even as possible, it cooks better. It cooks better as well. And I like my meat medium rare, and sometimes I like it rare. So if you can get this stuff is really tedious to get all this, you know, very like small layer of fascia. If you can get that off, that works. That makes the steak cook much better. It doesn't curl up. You know, it doesn't curl up. So sometimes I'll just slice off the top or whatever to kind of even out, you know, because if you look at it from this side, it's a little bit higher than it is on this side. And sometimes, you know, it makes it cook uneven. So sometimes I'll sort of level it out a little bit if I can at the top. Get some of that fascia off. That's going to burger, that's going to trim. And then nicer cuts like this, sometimes I'll just use that for the stir fry area. So now I got a decent little steak right here. Like you see, that's about the portion of your hand. It's probably about 4 ounces, you know, somewhere anywhere between 20 to 30, 35 grams of protein, I believe that's in that. So yeah. This one right here is what I usually do is I cap this one off. You see, it's got kind of thins out, you know, kind of tapers up, you know, because the meat there. So I usually cut that part off at the top. And this is nice tender cut. So this goes to stew meat. So I'll just trim that up real quick. This is for stir fry or stew meat. You know, I get up in the morning and I cook a pile of that alongside some eggs or something. It's gonna go in there. This one too, so I'll just go ahead and kind of cap that off right here in the edge. Again, the steak just cooks a little bit nicer if you get it like that. Get some of that really thin fascia off. These pieces on top, this is all going to my pile for trim, for burger. It's a nice cut there, so that way you get this little tissue off right here, and that's why, again, I like to use one of these thinner, more flexible blades, because you can kind of sliver it between this tissue and get it off. So it's not perfect. Usually I spend a little bit more time, but I'm kind of pressed for time today. Plus I'm doing this video, and this edge too gets a little thin, so I'll go ahead and cap that off as well. This is going to stir fry. It's going in that pile. The rest of this is going to some trim. Go ahead and just finish this, clean this up on top right here. So these are decent steak right here. Another nice couple of them right there. So I'll put those aside. And then, you know, going back to what I was saying a little while ago about once you start, you know, getting all this meat and these steaks and these cuts, and you look at it, it gives you an idea too, you know, how much meat people might have been eating in history. You know, we're certainly, you know, as much as I'm a big advocate of meat eating, we certainly are eating more meat, you know, than our ancestors did. And I don't know, you know, there's a lot of conflicting studies out there. I'm still kind of confused myself. I guess I have to just see what happens. I have to start getting colonoscopies. And does meat eating, you know, really put you at risk of colorectal cancer? You know, I don't know. There's a lot of conflicting evidence right there. There's a lot of politics involved. It's hard to trust these various science institutions that might be bought out by this plant-based agenda or something, you know. So this is also a nice cut. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up. I'll go ahead and just round this part off, the top right there. This is going to some stir fry. I don't like to include a lot of fascia in the stir fry either. So see what I did is I separated. I got some fascia on both of this piece, but this piece is going to stew, so I'm just putting it aside as I go. That other part's going to burger. Stew, stir fry, I kind of just use that interchangeably. I use it for either or. So yeah, back to what I was saying a little while ago. You know, you really see how much meat you got, and it gives you an understanding. You know, were people eating this much meat? You know, historically. I know for us all at them, like they didn't hunt the mule deer year round. Obviously, there was a season for it, but they eat protein. They eat, you know, the cottontail rabbit. They even eat field rats and things like that year round. So you know, they acquired protein whenever they could. It wasn't something they only did seasonally, but the acquisition of protein for sure was limited, you know, was limited for sure. And today we're freezing meat and we're eating it all year long. You know, so we're kind of outside of the ways, I think, in some senses, of the way our ancestors had operated. And I think that to a degree, there's a level of like, you can look at that as you're evolving or you're progressing. Now you got technology that allows you to access this year round, you know, and that could be beneficial to your health. But again, we'll have to see, because like I said, there's a lot of conflicting studies. Here's a nice piece right here. I'm gonna go ahead and separate that one. You see the fascia is holding it together. Go ahead and cut this trim off. There's another area, you get some nice cuts out of this. Nice steaks out of this. That's my favorite also. All this I'm gonna deal with a little bit after. That's a little bit more tedious because I'm gonna separate the fascia from it and get it into burger. And then what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna go ahead and take all this fascia off and then cut it into steaks. All right, so you can see right here, I cleaned up that bottom round and got all the fascia off of it, and it's just straight up protein like this. So this makes a couple of nice steaks. You know, you can cut it in half right there. You can do, you know, 3 of them, 1, 2, you know, so you get 3 right there. So I'll probably do that because I'm trying to get as much as I can out of it. So we got a nice 3 steaks right there. Got a nice, looking like about a 1-inch thick right there, so we can cook it to get like a nice red center. And yeah, there we go. We got these right here. We got this This, I believe this is an eye of round as well. Now we got this sirloin too. And most people make this as a roast. I don't like roast so much, so I can get a couple of steaks out of this. It's just a little bit more tedious work. And then the rest of it goes to burger and cutting up for stir fry. So I'm gonna do that next. All right, so let's see what I got right here. We got some stew meat right here, or stir fry, stew meat, whatever. Got a nice shank right here for slow cooking, for soups. Got some steaks here, plenty of steaks that I cut from the bottom round, sirloin, the eye of round. Lots of nice little steaks right here to be eating throughout the week. Look at that, nice, lean, nutrient dense, ethically sourced protein. Wamachukuk, goody Hawaii Wamachukuk is the meat of the hindquarter. And the femur for bone broth. And over here I got, this is all trim for a burger, for grind. Make some burgers, make some chorizo, different things like that. I got tons more grind. I don't grind this up right away, I'll freeze it, I'll get to it later. We're so slammed. So yeah, this is just one of the ways I like to break down the Wamachukuk, the hindquarter meats right here. How many do we have here? We got 11 nice 11 cuts right here, and we got that nice roast right here, and some stir fry, and this femur here for bone broth as well. So this is just one. So this is why I love this process, acquiring the meat and having a hand in every step of the way. It's empowering. It's getting one step closer to indigenous food sovereignty. And when I sit down to eat this, we sit down to eat this as a family. We're always giving thanks. Having gratitude for the animal's life is always at the forefront of the mind. I think of the work that went into it. I think of having a reverence for the animal as I'm eating it, because it gave its life to nourish me and the family. So I'm just try to be very mindful as I'm eating there, and thinking about what that animal had contributed, the beauty that he contributed to the ecosystem, the balance that he brought to the ecosystem, and all of this interconnected web of life that we live amongst. And he played a role in that. And I always give thanks and honor that. And because of that, after I kill the animal and I do my words of giving it thanks in my ceremony, I say all that and more. I let that animal know that we will use as much of it as we can here, and it will nourish us in a good way. And I ask that goody Hawaii, I ask this buck here to be with me on the future hunts, and to teach me how to see like them, how to hear like them, how to think like them, to be swift like them, how to move like them, and also not to be seen, not to be heard, not to be smelt. So I ask them to be with me on those future hunts there. So I envision that too when I go out on a new hunt. I envision these animals are with me, and they're putting into my consciousness, telling me, look that way, look under that tree, maybe they're over there, so that's part of what we goes into hunting. That's that spiritual aspects of hunting, but it's all integrated. This contributes to living a healthy way of life on the land. I always say you're doing stuff on the land with people you love, for people you love. And food waste is a really powerful way of doing that, because you're acquiring food for yourself and your family. You're getting more connected to that land. When we get out there to do the hunt, we endure the cold, or you might endure warmth. You might endure, your back is being ached, or you're enduring this hard climb. And you're in that process, the grind, the grit, the durability that you acquire is one way that we align ourselves. I say, with that Mother Earth, we're aligning ourselves with the natural world. Same thing is done too when you're foraging. When you're foraging, the plants, or you're going out to check to see if the plants are ready to be foraged, or when you're planting seeds, you're aligning yourself. Your overall, I believe that we have that overall spiritual frequency, the bioelectricity, the electromagnetic energy that we have in our hearts, nervous systems, the synapses. I believe that is part of your spiritual power, and you're aligning that frequency, or that energy, I guess, for lack of a better word, with the Mother Earth, the natural world, with the plant nations, the animal nations. When you observe the behavior, when you observe the changes on the land, behavior of the animals and the plants, I believe that we're connecting ourselves to that natural world, which is our original caretaker. It's how we evolved and got who we are today and got how we are. It's because that we had that relationship for millions of years with that natural world. And dominant culture has come along and they teach people that you're separate from it, that there's this concept of nature and that nature is something to conquer. Nature is separate from you. You're different because you have 5 fingers and you have 2 eyes in front of you. They teach you somehow that you're different from it. But as Native people, we see ourselves as a part of this beautiful interconnected web of life. We're not at the center of it. We're a part of it and we play a role within that. We have a responsibility to act accordingly and walk a certain way into the natural world. And that goes along with hunting as well. And so I try to share all that as well. This is just a different perspective as Native people, sharing this with my fellow Native people to reacquire those ways and to take up your indigenous spiritual practices in regards to hunting if it's no longer being practiced in your community, to find that, and then also to open up your consciousness to learn new ways, because I do believe that once you start to open up your consciousness in your mind and you have compassion and empathy as you hunt and respect and reverence for that life, then things come into your consciousness. Different things will come into your mind and teach you new lessons about hunting and how to go forward. New protocols to take with you as you go forward in hunting, butchering, and meat processing. So I just wanted to kind of share that. Those are the sorts of things that are always on my mind as I'm doing this process right here. But I'm very grateful for this young buck here, this young Hawaii, this spiker, for showing himself and allowing himself to be harvested and killed, so that way we can nourish ourselves. And it's unfair in a way, and sometimes I do it with regret. It's unfair in certain ways, but that's the world we live upon. In order for life to thrive and exist, other life has to expire, whether you have a hand in it or not. It's happening all around us. It's been happening for millions of years as well. So it just is, and that's the way I view it as human beings. Sometimes, things are the way they are, and it just is, and we're okay with that. We don't need to control or try to understand everything or try to assert our superiority of human beings over the natural world and how things go. It's just not our way. But anyways, I share that much, and I just thought this would be fun to make video and show one way I break down the deer hindquarter.